So today I'm going to solo and talk to you about something crucial for all of us as we move through midlife, getting the right blood tests at your annual physical. In fact, I was really inspired to do this episode when a really good friend of mine kept asking for a cheat sheet of all the tests that she should ask for at her next annual physical. So these tests are a key to knowing what's going on inside our bodies so that we can take proactive steps to stay healthy no matter what our age. And there will be links in the show notes to previous episodes of Age Better, which referenced some of these tests if you want to take a deeper dive, as well as a cheat sheet that you can literally take a screenshot of and share with your healthcare provider at your next annual physical. So let's start with the essential blood work you should be asking for at every annual physical. We'll begin with the classic Lipid Panel. This test measures your total cholesterol, HDL, the good cholesterol, LDL, the bad cholesterol, and triglycerides, and then the ratio of all of them. I've discussed this test in many episodes because it's kind of foundational to heart health. In my conversation with Dr. Anne-Marie Navarre, she made it clear that while the lipid panel is important, it's not always enough to give you the full picture of your heart health. And this brings me to the next critical test, the Apolipoprotein B test, ApoB test. If you caught my episode with Dr. Navarre, I hope you did. It was great. I'll put a link in the show notes. You might remember her talking about the game-changing importance of the ApoB test. ApoB is a more accurate measure of cardiovascular risk because it counts the number of actual particles that are in your blood. And this test can help identify risks that a traditional lipid panel might miss. Dr. Navarre is a strong advocate for adding this test to your routine, especially since cardiovascular disease is still a major health risk for women in midlife. Another essential heart health test is the Lipoprotein A, or LPA test. It measures your genetic risk for heart disease. Even if your cholesterol levels are good and normal, a high LPA can increase your cardiovascular risk. This is especially important for women in midlife as heart disease risk increases the older that we get. And having this information could lead to earlier interventions and better outcomes. Currently, there's no clear way to lower this number, whatever that number is, but Dr. Navarre is involved in new research that will hopefully help us to address this at some point in the near future. So stay tuned on that. The next test is actually two. Inflammation is really super, super important, and we should all be paying attention to it. The C-reactive protein, CRP, is a key indicator. High levels of CRP in the blood can indicate chronic inflammation, which is linked to heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and even certain cancers. And in my discussion with Steve Perrine, we talked about how inflammation can be a silent enemy affecting everything from your weight to overall health. So testing the CRP gives you insight into the inflammation levels in your body and then can help you with your healthcare provider to take steps to reduce it, whether through diet, exercise, or medical treatments. But please note there are two different CRP tests. The one I just talked about really addresses general inflammation in your body, but then there's something called the high sensitivity CRP test, and that is specific to your cardiovascular health. So you really want to get both of these tests, as I always do, when you speak with your doctor. The next one is, I've mentioned in many, many episodes, particularly with Dr. Margaret Nachtigal, the importance of vitamin D. Vitamin D is critical. It's a critical nutrient, especially for bone health, brain health, and immune function. Very importantly, low levels of vitamin D can lead to osteoporosis, a major concern for women in midlife. A simple blood test can determine if you're deficient in vitamin D and then what steps you need to take to build up that level of vitamin D in your body, perhaps with supplements and maybe more sun. And then Finally, blood glucose levels should be checked regularly to monitor for diabetes and prediabetes. Dr. Nisa Parikh and I discussed the importance of catching elevated blood sugar as early as possible. It's one of those silent health risks that can develop without symptoms, but early detection through a blood glucose test allows for dietary changes or medical interventions that can prevent more serious health issues down the road. Be sure your healthcare provider does the A1C test as well, which measures average blood glucose levels over a 3-month period. And it's really crucial for diagnosing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. Some additional key screenings that you should think about because, while these blood tests are crucial, remember that they're just one part of your overall health picture. And here are some other really key tests that you really want to talk with your doctor about during your next annual physical exam. Your blood pressure. High blood pressure is a major risk factor for heart disease and stroke, and make sure to monitor this regularly. You can even do it at home. And then I mentioned several times the coronary artery calcium score test, the CAC. It's non-invasive scan. It measures the amount of calcium in your arteries, and it's a great way to assess your risk for heart disease down the road. This test was also discussed in my episode with Dr. Anne-Marie Navarre, who emphasized how it helps pinpoint early signs of cardiovascular problems, even if all the other tests show normal results. After that episode, I had this test, and because I'm a runner and I lead a fairly healthy life, I was shocked to discover that my number was 18. I was definitely expecting it to be 0, and many women in midlife can have 0. So the point here is that you have no idea whatsoever how much plaque, if any, you might have in your arteries. So get this test. It's cheap, usually covered by insurance. Super, super fast, took me 8 minutes, and non-invasive. Another one, of course, you all know this already, because if you've been following me for a while, is the bone density test. Knowing the strength of your bones is critical, and having strong bones as you get older is so important for aging better. And this is a real issue for postmenopausal women, especially in my episodes with Dr. Margaret Noctegal, when we talked at length about how critical it is to stay on top of your bone health, especially as estrogen levels drop after menopause. And of course, my involvement in the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation for over 10 years has caused me to become a bit of a bone health fanatic. But you really do need to take care of your bones if you want to age better. No question about it. So another thing is throw away that scale and take out the tape measure. A key measure of visceral fat, which is that fat around your belly, is your waist, the size of your waist. And that is also a key indicator of potential risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So discuss that measurement with your doctor, and it's certainly something that you can do yourself. For sure, waist measurement is becoming more important than the BMI. And just because we're getting older doesn't mean that we shouldn't be going in for our pap smears and pelvic exams. So based on your family history and risk factors, you really do need to have your regular mammograms, but discuss that with your doctor how often you should. And colon cancer screening is critical once you reach your 50s. If you haven't had one yet, or if you're due for a repeat, talk to your doctor and get it scheduled. So to recap, here are the essential blood tests you really want to get at your next annual physical. The Lipid Panel, the Apolipoprotein B, ApoB test, the Lipoprotein A test, the LPA test, the C-reaction protein test, the high sensitivity CRP test, the glucose test, and don't forget the additional screenings and measurements, blood pressure, coronary artery calcium score test, bone density test, waist circumference, pap smear and pelvic exam, mammogram, and colonoscopy. Everyone, it sounds like a lot. All of these tools are part of building a complete picture of your personal health, helping you take proactive steps to age better. Be sure to have these conversations with your doctor at your next visit. Don't wait. Just bring the list with you and get these tests scheduled. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. I'll include links to episodes with Dr. Anne-Marie Navarre, Dr. Margaret Noctegal, and Steve Perrine in the show notes that you can dive a little bit deeper into these topics if you'd like. And tune in next week when my guest is Dr. Joan Grossman, who is the lead author of new research focusing on how high-intensity interval training, better known as HIIT, is a key component in weight loss in midlife women. So, talk to you soon.